This is part 1 of Whispering Willows. Let us begin the journey together. The Whispering Willows. Sophie's troubles had landed her in a soup, reading through her large rimmed spectacles, almost as big as Sophie herself. She decided to start penning a novel based on true characters, on the beautiful story of the wind in the willows, written by Kenneth Grahame. Only this time, the characters of the storybook would be her dearest uncles, aunts, grandmother and grandfather, cousins and acquaintances, with fortitude built like a pack of cards, or Jenga a ton of bricks, laying it layer by layer, brick by brick, into a stupendous storybook for keeps, named The Whispering Willows. Characters of the wild wood: Mole, Molly or Joanna, Water Ratty, Joe or Joseph, Badger, Johnny or John, Toady as charming Mr. Toad, Dotty Grimwald as Toadus Dotty Grimwald, Great Uncle Mr. Juliana, Little Toad as Uncle Donny, kindly old weasel Mary, also as grandmother ferret Mary Rose Magdalene Herbage, horse Davidson or David, also as grandfather ferret Michael Devasia Mathai Herbage, bunny rabbit Leoni, also as a ballet high ballerina of mist and dew, the great African grey Romeo, moustache parakeets Charlie Brown and Alice Little, golden-haired fairy ferret Jill, March hare Teresa, also as the golden dinner bell fairy Tinkerbell, beaver Mr. Nuddle, chef of Mr. Toad, Tommy the young otter Jolene, lizard police watchguard Christopher, well-mannered stoat Donita, Mrs. Badger, Philo, Hedgehog Brothers, Hedgehog Little, Denzel, Hedgehog Great, Daniel, Gerbedy Master of Christmas Coyer, Mr. Brett, Coyer of Church Mises, his cousins, the prison warden or Gaola, a wild ferret Paul, the stout badger washerwoman Lydia, the train driver Mr. Pussycat Handlebars Johann, strict rooster kindergarten teacher or principal Lenny, gypsy beaver Stephen, Princess Cleopatra, Tulip, foxes the enemies, otter Anonymous, police officers Toads, Mises and the Hound Baskerville Sergeant of Police, owl of judges and stork, pelicans, herons, quails and flamingos, members of the trusted jury. Sophie began, rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat, pounding away at the keys of the typewriter to start off with her poem. She often found writer's block and so many troubles, like immense boulders writers often faced, blundering her path to turn them into her building blocks. Sophie's troubles. Whether Sophie's pumpkin's patch would be full of turnips or radishes, or rabbits, turtle doves, cocks and weasels with a pumpkin head scarecrow and talking crunchy carrots, purple lady aubergines whisper to lady fingers all about the plot of the charming animals down the lanes of the Whispering Willows, the jungle of garden friends jamboree. Spring cleaning. Mr. Mole had a lot of spring cleaning to do. Thick drops of paint fell on his white plastered face he covered with soft white muslin, to prevent from being totally whitewashed, as he wished to do a whitewashing chore around his old crusty walls deep down the hole in the mossy forest grounds, beside the tall welcoming branches and sprawling roots of the Whispering Willows. He was at it the whole day, happily brushing strokes as paintbrush would suffice on a bare canvas upon the easel built of stone and rock, down many miles under the turf, when looking up welcomingly at the ancient clock, tick-tock, tick, it was time for a sip of coffee, black and smug like the musty rooms he was so tired of being in day in and out. So decided the mole.
After I make a strong black Cherokee, coffee as black ratty, the color of a sleek velvety hair, like a brush of black night sky, I shall climb out of my hole and uppity into the clear sky blue atmosphere, away from spring cleaning and whitewashing.
Then taking sips of a mug of hot piping brew, drink hot coffee, drink hot tea, burn your lips and remember me, played on his lips as he sipped deliciously and finished. He soon started to dig upwards the deep hole and into the blue marvelous sky toward the end, to reach the ancient rat house of the water rat. It seemed, after all their years of adventures, they had turned out to be best friends. As thick as thieves, love thicker than blood. Not to say blood thicker than water, they exhorted to themselves. Criminals of an underground kingdom, the animals of the garden patch were almost from the same families of beloved rodents, as well as Badger, who always was content with his own company, reading most of the time like a bookworm with little time to spare for 3 musketeers to gallivant their high horses. One special beloved friend, the old buggy horse of rich Mr. Toady. They loved the little fellow David and fed him with all they could afford. Barley, sugar, corn and oats. In fact, they loved befriending all Mr. Toady's priceless beasts, even his cocks, hens, bulls and rabbits, squirrels, march hares, lizards, toads, bumblebees, weasels, cats, dogs, beavers, shrews and voles, all who lived around the whispering willow garden, the critters of the jamboree. As Mr. Molly exited out through the brilliant sunshine air,
"Onion sauce,
he commented, Molly to himself in tears, pleasingly swallowing air and fresh oxygen molecules, exhaling and breathing out carbon dioxide. In response, the jungle exhaled thick mists and dense clouds of vapor into a light fleeting drizzle, an exchange of airy-fairy tete-a-tete rendezvous with nature, when a large Alice bunny rabbit hopped close by, with a ticket in his hand, as if he were collecting a fare for an adventure through the garden picket surrounding the large wooden mansion of Mr. Toady. Around a large river, they naturally would have to cross it, with a scull boat to reach it. This water ratty often did as a sport with Mr. Mole and sometime Mr. Badger, if he was available, of course, on their threesome adventures to the Mr. Toady's spiffy and natty spruce mansion and wading through his pick lawns. There he saw a bright shining face, though black his whiskers polished silvery like a moonshine through the green foliage. Mr. Ratty, as if he wore a black velvet 2 tuxedo tails, was sitting on his blue and white quadruple scull boat, with 4 pair of sculls or oars on either side, for Molly, Badger, Water Ratty and Toady, of course, who often missed their scull boating expeditions. A funny observation: the haggle pot for bargaining about picnic, time to be spent fruitfully, choosing work over leisure, or playtime over work. All work and no play make Jack a dull boy. He seemed embroiled in real play at Hems, explained that there's also a time and place for old school haggling. Both parties chest their cards, each hoping the other will misplay his hand. After lots of back and forth posturing, they settle on a fair and square prize, on a quad scull boating adventure of a picnic time. Each can live with, although both know that the deal is likely better for one side than the other. At some point, it still comes down to determining who gets which slice of the pie. The cost price they would haggle for. The cost, whether be relevant or irrelevant, of Toadie's guilty pleasures and juiced car rides, or the price they would pay owing Toadie's ambitious car racing sprees when time against tide could be spent rowing, picnicking and fishing. Toady would miss his slice, good from far, far from better, by far getting himself into trouble again. For his misadventures once more, they would need to save him in the bargain. But for now, they had a taste of it all, boating, fishing, fun and frolicking of this strange little haggle pot. Ratty had just used his painter to fetch from a deep hole right at the bottom, where he lived a huge picnic basket. The hook he neatly burrowed inside the handles, then bringing it up from the hole into his quad-shell scull boat, meant for 4 rowers, and settled it just at the bottom of his feet, staggering with its heavy tonnage, panting whilst carrying the heavy weight of the picnic basket. And finally dropping it down, quite excitedly jerking and tugging now at the oar handles and calling out,
"Molly, Molly, come fast. Let's sail our way through the river brushes, bulrushes and whispering willows. Looks like the occupant storks, ducks, song sparrows, a swan song entourage with necks, hummingbirds, drakes, otters, herons, little egrets, gribbers, kingfishers, sandpipers, lapwing gulls, flamingos, swallows, spoonbill, cormorants and mallards have filled its edges and hems. Let's cast away our sails with fishing hooks and tackles and hope to catch a few sole and monkfishes in our baskets. Hook, line and sinker with our jolly crawly worm baits,"
Mr. Mole quite ecstatically exclaimed.
And what a steal! A whole basket of picnic surprises! I hope we find Mr. Badger along the way. He would be surely surprised as much as an owl or pussy. It's good to poke the bear once in a while from his sleep.
The experienced water rat stroked the silvery morning sunshine stars that gleamed on the surface of the water, and made a quick brush through the placid stream as the bulls, rushes, tall ferns and curious peeping flowers, dragonflies, butterflies and lily pads kissed the edges of the boat as it swayed down the ruffles of its rippling watery rings, laughing and giggling out madly in concentric circles around their scull boat. On the stern end sat Mr. Mole, enjoying their sailboating adventure, hoping to catch up with lazy Mr. Badger, who lived just around the corner in a very solemn hole, somewhere deep down the magical flora and fauna. They had a special bugle-horn they blew twice in order to make notice. They arrived near his dwellings. Sometimes Water Ratty even whistled, as lovely as a pied pipe. 3 encouraging notes. Beep, 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 to call and wake up Mr. Badger from his daydreaming or sleepy snores. Luckily this time Mr. Badger awoke from his afternoon siesta in just a second hoot on the strange bugle horn, and soon they saw a tan-brown silvery grey head peeping up through the signpost below a little badger hole. His address mentioned clearly, "Mr. Badger down here, trespassers not allowed." Just a way to keep off those sly foxes on their way to trick someone, or maybe a prey for their empty stomachs, which were always ravenously hungry for maybe a mouthful, not sparing even a kind soul. As Mr. Molly, Mr. Ratty, Mr. Badger or Mr. Toady, the heroes of our story, thence they always advised never to go at night through the horrid forest, which at daytime didn't seem at all so threatening or foreboding to the innocent dwellers of the Whispering Willows. The Picnic. Mr. Molly, inspired and brainwashed by the breathtaking splendor of early dawn, as the mist and fog uplifted the curtain of the dark mystery night, and the twinkle of the stars died down, unfurling wispy young morning smoky haze, as if in a blessed daydream. The chatter and chortle of the birds and the buzzing of bees, even translucent neon butterflies fluttering hither, thither, and yon amongst the lush countryside. For he would so love to paint its surreal dream landscape upon an easel, its innocent white illustrious canvas, as he always dabbled with paints even while spring cleaning or whitewashing all the house, laundry, and even himself, now was filled with curiosity. What contained inside the heavy luncheon basket that was beneath Mr. Water Ratty's feet? As Mr. Water Ratty commented, debating the unmistakable beauty.
Marvelous, marvelous. Such a picturesque landscape. Our waterboat sails like a dream beyond the blue horizon. Its myriad of little row houses like tiny attached cases.
As they traversed inside the scullboat, each with their oars, even Mr. Badger had carried his special 4 books, being an avid reader. The Magic Well, the Fairies' Quill Magic World, and the magical Emerald City in his haversack along with him. He couldn't miss an opportunity such as this through the meandering, babbling riverside. With so many curious visitors this week, it was thoroughly spellbinding and enchanted adventure. Mr. Water Ratty, eagerly in response to his mates, answered, chipping in enthusiastically.
What a wonderful time down the riverside, serenading with my lovely luncheon basket. It's luncheon rhyme, now to tell you the secret of the contents, before we opened it, of course, to begin with a serenade. Ham, butter, beef, mayonnaise, tonguefish fillets. Burger, chutney, cheese straws, cheese sticks, cheesecakes, salad, lettuce, cabbage, mustard, celery, parsley, pistachio, sankovies, fish fingers, croissant, chicken drumsticks, sausage rolls, poppadoms. Piggy in blanket, scotch eggs, veg rainbows, sandwiches. Quite a mouthful. Yum, yum. Slurp.
He relished with drops of his salivating glands trickling so much more than he could practice to serenade a picnic tongue-twister song in just a split second. Mr. Molly and Mr. Badger were just as high in spirits and licking lips with their little pink tongues, sipping on their straws on lime cordial, gin and soda water, lapping up and basking in breath of sunshine air to relish every little bit in the description of the serenading luncheon basket. With gusto, they declared,
"We would love to be your guests. Wouldn't we helping ourselves to every crumb and sandwich? Without saying goes well with meat and hammage, as goes lugs with luggage."
As they sailed by soon, bubbles arose from the water, and out popped an otter, their sweet friend.
"Now,"
Remarked he,
"wouldn't I be invited to such a party picnic as this? It would be a shame to feed gastronomic without passing me a fish or mullet. You always would oblige without any excuses."
Mr. Water Ratty, removing 2 big sardines from a tin can inside his luncheon basket and a handful of mullets, passed it onto the otter, who happily grabbed it with his snout and said to the greedy, hungry otter, whilst busily gulping voraciously,
Our dear friend Otter, we would never displease you, let you feel we didn't invite you. We are off to a peaceful place somewhere through the snaky river bends that way. Could you please guide us?
The otter, happily munching on the delicious sardines and mullets, pointed his finger to the left and described articulately, for he always loved giving directions and handy pointers, forecasting weathers like a weather-vane otter.
Today the Creek Inlet Isles will be sunny and breezy as the clouds depart from the mountains, blowing westward to the isolated green patches by the sandy beach. It's the best quiet place I've ever experienced on my travels through the length of this riverside. You'd love the scenery and the colorful birds that visit the beautiful sprawling branches of the nutty trees, not to mention the squirrels and lizards that abound there. Even the windmill house can be seen not very far from its peaceful ambience. You could spot a picture near the old woman's shoe by the hanging willow gardens if you have carried your cameras. The still landscape is always inviting for a few cheesy smiles from good old buddies.
"Thank you," replied the water ratty, and the three friends bid him a goodbye and continued with sculling their oars to the left of the riverside, till they reached the splendiferous picnic spot, bringing boat ashore and safely placing their oars to one side of the shaded elm. They got off, helping one another to climb out and into the beautiful surrounding. Removing their huge picnic basket and mats, they laid out, selecting a spot almost close to the riverside itself, and spread one by one the contents of the picnic basket, passing on the ham and bacon sandwiches and pouring out delicious sweet meat, salad, hot piping tea and ginger biscuits that Mr. Badger had carried in his thermos flask and haversack, whilst he continued to open pages from his beautiful illustrated story books to read further, whilst tearing a little page for Mr. Molly, and handing him his best fountain nib pen to scribble few lines of poetry and a wonderful doodle of the rich countryside, the swans that tumbles down the riverside. He made it up himself. Like a lid out of Lord Byron's head, he evolved one ditty.
The swans as white as bread, and toasty golden the sunrise, they tumbled with their heads, dipping into the tea the slough of babbling pewter, whistling away pee, 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 on the stove like bubbling milk and water merrily. Now they dabbled once or twice inside the river water, and then above to see reflections of their grateful entourage with necktails and beaks. They solved the jigsaw puzzle of the heart that sleeves many men wear before they confess true love to their Juliets. The Romeos doubled a swan song entourage, white and peppered, grey and blue, with sails as one merrily oared down the babbling brooks, called Amour, up and down and up. The swan song ditty I composed.
At the end of his poetry recitation, Mr. Badger, Mr. Molly, and Mr. Water Ratty all sang together the famous dabble and travel song they had learned in school when they were young, and Mr. Water Ratty played along to the beat of its magical melody with snap of fingers and clapping of hands, music on his bright red harmonica.
My paddles green and white, flushing with silver, follow the bluebird's flight. Dip, dip and sing as he doubles and travels about. So do we now in our blue and white scull boats with our glistening oars. Dip, dip and sing, flushing with silver, follow the swan song tails and bright blue crested wing. Follow the bluebird's flight. Dip, dip and sing, 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 sing.
As the valleys and rivers resounded an echo back with a ballet high song lingering along the windy breath of morning sunshine air. It went like this.
A ballet high. Ballet high. Ooh, ooh, hoo. We'll call you any time, any day. In your heart you'll hear her whisper. Come away, ooh, ooh, hoo, come away. Your own special hopes, your own haunting dreams, shimmer in her starways and shine in her breeze. In your eyes, you'll see her vanish in the mist to a distant, faraway place, till she appears dancing once again in your dreams. Ballet high, ooh, ooh, will call you any time, any day. In your heart, you'll hear her whisper, "Come away, ooh, 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 come away."
Whilst Mr. Water Ratty had a hand at fishing sport with his hook, line, fishing rod and tackle, hooking a worm as his bait. Luckily he caught white baits, minnow, catfish, tilapia, anchovies, even got hold of a king and a blue crab in his little cage, fighting with its pincers and snapping pliers. Luckily won like a gallant silver shining knight of a fish and sea rat battle. He put it inside his net to take home.
An affair à convoiter, an affair to covet.
A specimen of his special picnic tale to remember forever. After their lucky sailboat trip ended, his friends Mr. Molly and Mr. Badger sufficiently showered upon him a round of applause honoring him with title of Fisher Ratty of the Century. Then Mr. Badger pouring more cups of his special spiced lemon tea, a second serving to all his dear friends, and remaining cinnamon buns, which was a last surprise to the amicable party of picnickers. Whilst little birds and their friends, the squirrels, came by for the leftover crumbs. Even the lizards got a taste of the best plum mayflies that hovered near their picnic baskets. The wet smudge of the chocolate stain on their faces. The ant-eaters and hogs or ant-bears, along with the friendly rodents, the Badger Ratty Molly, smelled like hot chocolate cocoa fudge as they burrowed noses and faces inside the creamy mud, trying to nibble a few earthworms, leeches, slugs or ants. Even an extra helping few swarming clusterflies and jumping lady love bugs and beetles that surely Mr. Toady they imagined would love to catch on such an adventurous picnic as this by the slick flicks of his long, oily tongue. A sport they couldn't deny outbeat any time, anywhere with its interesting time pass munchies like a spin of a red dazzling beetle top and little flying dragonfly-tailed kites. Everyone had a steal of a treasured time and mouth-watering ants, worms and insects. And now it was time to pack the huge picnic luncheon basket once again. It was easily unpacked, but now packing up, one had to remember the plates that was around the grass, hidden spoons and forks, the butter knives and of course pepper and salt shakers, and the little mustard pot. Carefully placing all the ingredients of the happy luncheon picnic party into the luncheon basket, they proceeded folding their mats and taking a picture only hand-drawn by clever Mr. Molly, for they had not brought their camera along. Mr. Molly made an exact replica of the three cheesy smiles, imagining him to be there standing beside the old woman's shoe of the hanging whispering willow, Bow's Gardens, as they circled hands around shoulders, though he was the center of attention. The brilliant artist sketching them say cheese and a bunch of red balloons, then scribbled a rhyme on the postcard he painted as he sang the old nursery rhyme very well. The old woman who lived in a shoe. There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children, she didn't know what to do. A mole, a badger, a toad, and a rat. Contrary to her crocodilian of Pat's nursery kindergartners that hung upside down the roof of the shoe house, rather tongue-tied with shoe laces,
She spelled and teased and raised her cane, and taught them well manners and good ounce of shame. She also gave them a kiss every night if they learned how to make butterflies fly from their hats, sometimes even rabbits, Leon Shippeny peonies, and derby dragonfly fairies like magicians do from knot scarves, ribbons, bows, and handkerchiefs. Out they flew from nowhere, till so skilled her little children learned to poke every finger in her crusty pies, dabbled the witchcraft like experienced crooks, raised their collars, moles on shins and brows, along with their meddlesome cats and flying brooms as well, before she sent them all to bed in her old little shoe as big as a giant's boot. She gave them some broth without any bread and whipped them all soundly once more. Then finally she tucked each one to bed and a kiss on their little foreheads. The old woman who lived in Shoe by hanging whispering boughs of the Willow gardens, they wept whilst all of them slept soundly and dreaming in their little beds. The old woman, I guess, must have been a vole or a shrew of a witch. Quite a befitting title for Old Mother Goose,
said Mr. Morley to his friends as they enjoyed the lovely painting on the postcard. He sketched, and with it, his beautiful nursery rhyme. They wouldn't leave without commenting about rich Mr. Toad missing out all the fun, who lived right around the extreme opposite facing the Dahlia Windmill House on the picnic site. And how good it would be to have him on one of the prized picnic boating trips again. Mr. Toady missing out the much debated hagglepot of picnic surprises, red balloons, love bug beetles, cluster fly spinning tops, dragonfly-tailed kites and cake slices. They were planning to visit him the next day and made reservations for Mr. Badger to assist along with them, who they always had to fix a date or a special appointment in advance. Mr. Badger would be privileged to accompany them as 3 musketeers on a happy adventure to riotous Mr. Toady's rich mansion, who was always about his wheels and wheels, maybe sailing one day or canoeing, then maybe driving recklessly through the wild woods, battling with his unicycle or driving his truck. He always had the best, from clothes to automobiles, wagons to catamarans, dinghies and sailboats. He was in fact so blessed as to come unharmed as a little fly even after his many crazy and perilous adventures, as he loved racing through the wild woods once in a while, or must I say, often enough. Before they took turns to settle themselves on their scull-boats, in charge of the oars and sculls, Mr. Morley tried to maneuver the boat all by himself. Though not very experienced at handling it all by himself, a thorough greenhorn tipped the boat so badly that the boat along with sculls fell deep into the cold freezing waters, along with Mr. Morley. Coming to rescue as swiftly as possible was our hero, Mr. Water Ratty, with his sleek as shiny velvet coal-black body dived deep and plumbed the river depths, swimming bedraggled Mr. Morley right safely to the top of the surface, along with the remnants of the soiled huge picnic luncheon basket and his pair of sculls. Mr. Badger, quite upset at Mr. Morley, scolded him, very disappointed over the fact having lost a scrumptious saving for greedy beggars making way for the provender. In other words, the phrase seemed apt to apply for poor Mr. Water Ratty's luncheon saved for a rainy day. Loot of Mr. Water Ratty's precious hamage, he meant luncheon luggage wasted into the cold, frozen river for not having listened to them. However, bonhomie and good-humoured Mr. Water Ratty, forgiving Mr. Morley's rash decision to have a hand at the oars all by himself. Condoning all faults and untimely mishaps, invited all his beautiful compadres, after their praiseworthy adventure trip ended by the river, for a cup of hot piping Cherokee coffee or delicious hot cocoa, when they finished sailing through a dream like a song, re-energizing them with some delicious home-baked butterscotch cookies and sesame donuts, before all seated themselves inside the sailboat and had a firm grip at the sculls, once again all settling inside the scull boats, joined by 3 merry rowers. Whilst they sculled their way through, they spoke, jabbered and tittle-tattled, right through their enjoyable panorama of journey, of the latest news in the riverside, the dams, and the otter's new shoe. He found maybe a diver's soul, the SOS bottles flung out by steamboats, the Kloop cloth clum blue bottles and the leaf miners, insects and flies hovering over picnic baskets that distracted them like red herrings from their gossiping about Egret's lunch of baby fishes they always stole from poor Mr. Otter. Even the squirrel natterjacks robbing big nuts from Mr. March Hare's tree hole, so many fell down there. The jabber-knollers just irritated poor Mr. March Hare, and they always loved talking about the recent dam that was a blessed gift to all of them. Especially when the weather of rains thundered, filling it to the brim. They could huddle safely inside their holes and burrows, without a bit of worry over query, digging from it the stone, sand and grey limestone, for making a bridge over troubled waters, building a bond as solid as the London Bridge of friendship famed through generations, so tall and buttering a bridge of sticks, stones, straw and mud of the great wide world. Cheers to a primitive life! Hooray! Mr. Toady, the Open Road. Talk about the pot calling the kettle black to stir with ladle, what Mr. Toady often punned. To hell with the open road, too much racing I've got to. Zoom poo-poo poopity-poo-poo, with my horn I wish someone like Mr. Molly, Mr. Water Ratty or Mr. Badger would arrive sooner than they promised, to give my animals company whilst on my joyride through the open road. Ribbit, ribbit. The pot calling the kettle black was Mr. Toadie's bright idea, racing and landing himself in unnerving complicated situations only his friends could sort out, avoiding making the call to the police. In most situations, was he to blame for his rash and reckless car racing escapades? As if the open road was not full of roadies and car racing nerd nuts like him, hungering and honking their horns the way through the snaky lanes of the countryside. If it only hadn't been for Mr. Molly, Mr. Badger, and of course Mr. Water Ratty, to having Mr. Toady saved in the nick of time once again, paddling their way through their sailboat, hoping to catch up with Mr. Toady just in time, or in a wrinkle of a lagging hour. Also, the eeriness of choppy waves below and nippy atmosphere above, by the presence of the very enormous yellow moon, looming along the edges of the riverside and hem of the narrow path, bifurcating into the woods, where the large mansion of Mr. Toady lay sheltered amongst the whispering oaks, willows, and pines. They placed their oars alongst the shadows of the paddock in the barn rack, and welcomed good horse David of Mr. Toadie's little caravan cart. It was so spruce and tidy, with everything in place, just sufficient for the trio to keep their heads comfortable in the narrow bunk beds, with a blazing canary cage with 2 yellow canaries, and a stock of the best scallions, leeks, potatoes, bag of onions, cilantro, shallots, garlic pods, and red-hot peppercorns in the little kitchen, so that they could pop in for some hot chicken stew or some bubbling coffee brews to pep them up before they delved into the whimsical fads of mad Mr. Toadie's ventures. They knew he had taken his latest buggy and broomed away out into the open roads, almost every time landing himself in a soup as usual. But this time, as they decided to take a pleasurable ride by the pleasant countryside, befriending the good sturdy little horse David, and tethering upon him reins of the little spruce and natty caravan belonging to Mr. Toadie, for housing his curious friends, they were in for a rude surprise. Whilst they rambled by the caravan into the open road, to their utmost horror, they staggered in surprise and bewilderment when a raucous, zooming car, a love-bug jalopy, came barging right into the peaceful ambience. Lollop, trollop, lobolo-lop, gallivanting upon the sweet horse David on a jolly joyride, almost knocking over the caravan, luckily into the bushes, whilst poor Mr. Toadie swerved and crashed into a great big tree trunk, stunned by his overwhelming experience, hoping he had no broken bones, or even his cartilages and carriages spared from his nasty rash overtaking beetle lovebug, commencing a sad outcome of a joyride of cheap thrills. Sadly, would never learn a lesson to miss out on one of those speedy highs instead of sullen blues. The teeming friends, Mr. Ratty, Mr. Badger, and Mr. Molly, got down the pink and blue striped horse caravan and quickly assisted Mr. Toadie out from the burning wreckage. Hopefully, he was sound and safe, with just minor cuts and bruises, and complaining as recklessly as a horned bleep like a toy noddy. Whilst the car beetle lovebug sputtered, spuddle, extinguished his jaunty spirits in a cruggle and crink.
Toot tooty poopity poop, fresh as a daisicled, am I finished rather? Should I furnish with a bleep, horn, wiggle or moan?
Not yet finished with a sporty miscalculation override, and then hopping and jumping up and down madly as ever, he settled with the car wheel and horn in both his hands. They had naturally separated from the car.
Am I alive?
Mr. Toad cheerily said to Mr. Badger and Mr. Molly, blaming the pot that stirred the ladle, the pot calling the kettle black. He blamed the interference on the highway, explaining exasperated and intolerably than it deserved, blaming his phony actions on account because of some stupid herons, young stoats, weasels and beavers coming across the path. He had to swerve to the right, almost knocking his good friends onto the curbside into the bushes of the open road, as if it wasn't his fault for driving at such a high, abominable speed. I reckon he didn't sense danger arising from his usual daredevil feats when Mr. Molly did complain to Mr. Water Ratty and Mr. Badger.
I guess we should have to do a bit of complaining to the police.
Jibing with sarcasm, a joke as a warning jolt at poor Mr. Toad, his scarcely credible racing infatuations and his hopeless wreckage, in efforts to salvage situation, bring him to his senses and stop his madness. Ashamedly, he stopped his friends right on their tracks, correcting them immaturely, croaked,
Rip it. It's no sin, I say, speeding. Boo poopity boo boopity. What is sunshine or adventure meant for, if they don't go hand in hand over the open road and my love bug puggy instead of just a handful pieces of advice? Buts or ifs, but you shouldn't if you didn't. Rip it.
they condoning his many faults and mischievous stunts, owing to his fanatic love for riding cars, sailboats, wagons or trucks. I mean automobiles of any kind and types. Water Ratty, Molly and Badger settled their grouses with their foolish and rich friend Mr. Toadie, amicably and genially, cautioning him henceforth to never venture on a whirlwind of risk-taking sprees. naturally would land him in a soup or a disaster. Not reacting to his limp excuses or shy answers anymore made him promise to a sound bed rest of 30 days. They even vouchsafed to be his stout nanny nursemaid protectors and to live with him for a period of 30 engaging days, to provide him an informal kindly gesture of serving him breakfast in bed. A quick recovery after his mad mishap, both sense and sensibility, body, soul and mind. In other words, mind over matter, soul over sense, body and meditation, or else the matter they pretended would be divulged to the police department in a registrar of complaints. This they decided to do all within their powers, with good intentions, in order to keep Mr. Toady away from the open road. Private keep out Toady's mansion and the wild woods.
Oh, how I long for the wild woods,
sighed Mr. Molly to Badger, and Mr. Water Ratty, too agreeing, nodded heads at them. How they missed the beauty and serene life at their little ground holes by the whispering willows. Through the large mansion Mr. Toady possessed was too splendid for words. It had the slogan, "Private, keep out trespassers." This was done to keep the sly foxes, the enemies of all garden creatures, surrounding Mr. Toady's lush mansion. Around the deep wild woods, Mr. Toady's rich illustrated mansion displayed all of his ancient ancestors' artistic engravings and sketches on huge oil-painted and glossy canvases, porcelain busts of his forefathers, and hierarchy of jumping toads of the lilies and lily-pad gardens. Upon the breathtaking pools of long bulrushes and feathery dandelion puffs to make wishes come true for the four friends and their budding friendship, commencing right from infancy childhood to grown-up adult age, priming as blocks of old cheese, comedians of a replica rodent family, a chip of the old block indeed. Mr. Toady's Dooleana mansion, as the name suggested, Doolia and Dahlias, meaning little darlings and doolings, charming and quaint fairy folk of the Soda Bay Inlet, living around the beckoning waters of the wide wood. Opulence in its narrow islet, he had a sprawling 15-bedroom mansion, inherited from his great-great-great-grand uncle, Mr. Dooleana Little Toad, with turrets, spiral stairways and spires dating back to the 17th century, a newly renovated kitchen and sprawling living room with large banquet hall table for around 50 guests, great-sized balconies and verandas, high ceilings to the very top with classic ancient rotating fans, classic bathrooms and some luxury fittings and bathtubs, 2 kennels and a cat house for his pet Alsatians, Labradors and pussycats. Nestling right atop the roofs was an eye-catching crow's nest. To cuddle with his sweetheart, it had parking sheds and garages for his vast collection of spiffy motor cars with massive beams and pillars supporting the walls of the magnificent mansion, and its splendiferous artifacts, not to mention his great-great-great-grand uncle, Mr. Dooleana Little Toad's grand collection of tobacco-smoking chimney pipes made of briarwood, meerschaum, corncob, pearwood, rosewood, clay, even some dense-grained wood like cherry, olive, maple, mesquite, oak and bogwood, some minerals like catlinite and soapstone, its pipe bowls decorated by rich carvings and his molded clay ones, often with some simple decorations, some unusual ones like goats, as in the famous calabash pipe, pyrolytic graphite, its rims covered with heavy crust of lava, and the bowls a nice thick cake built up on the sides. Both had a strong smell of aromatic tobacco. While smoking his pipe like a gentleman in one ancient sketch upon the mansion walls showed he had lived a cretin lifestyle. that one viewed from the large balconies that Cretan soil generously offered olive oil, wheat, wine, honey, fresh herbs, greens and spices. And love. Mr. Walter Ratty exhaled.
A bachelor but incurable romantic, once like a vampire Popeye-toed sailor man who fell in love with a vampire olive oil toadess.
Mr. Morley commented to Mr. Badger, making a point.
Once bitten, twice shy. I suppose his poor heart stolen forever. Alas, fanked, drunk to sorrow. Sorrow laddered his bloodthirsty spirits, dragooned to fall head over heels, heels over head. Instead of knighted and even gaslighted, heartbreak over Romacidum, he forfeit his cards for playing knave rather fool of hearts. Another joker Jack trumped all aces over Jill. A poppeta for Nivus olive oil toad Papeta's clumsy heart.
Mr. Badger reminisced as he remembered dear Mr. Toadie's heartfelt sympathies for his rich great-great-great-grand-uncle.
Foolishness for toying like a toy toad.
Had sighed Mr. Toadie to all his friends once long ago.
Heartstrings of my great-great-great-grand-uncle Juliana's dear, fragile, and precious heart.
Who Mr. Toadie had always regarded as a Count Dracula toad of a great-great-great-grand-uncle, though reformed, of course, did herald such news as this from the Toad Hall books of generations, passed down in his great-grand library of toadstools, vampires, witchcraft, though rich and green like King Toad be, now rich in poverty like those beatitudes. Yet his dream to live a simple hermit life and solace its beckoning whispers of nature turned unhappiness to gladness, and woe to happiness, a welcoming Cretan landscape of the surreal soda water inlet. The character of the entire location was totally fairy tale. Now, before the 30 days of promise to Mr. Toadie could pass by furtively, Mr. Morley, however, longed to venture all by himself. The next early morning, even without a mention or a breath to his two friends, a solitary trek to the wild woods, he filled his little haversack with pleasant surprises from the pantry. A rasher of ham and 2 rashers of bacon, a bottle of marmalade and a few toasts, even a bottle of lemonade, a few greens, beans and pasta. He rummaged from the huge fridges inside the big, beautiful kitchen of Mr. Toadie, even without his obliging chef, Beaver Mr. Nuddle, knowing about his deliberate miscue that his adventure with rations of home scraps would result into a catastrophe. Mr. Morley, happy and self-opinionated, regarded him being totally self-sufficient in handling such a risky trek as this out by his own, through the wild woods, commented.
Certain creatures like mole enjoy finding out things by themselves, whilst other poor creatures like to be spoon-fed.
Raising up his collar while scampering along, sang the jailer song of the happy reunion of his 3 friends, as happily and innocently he ventured out, rambling into the deep woods beyond. Jailers.
How we jailed specimens of the hidden holes, hibernating in winter, now spring extols, our treks beyond the hidden vales, out on our own. Sometimes we oar, sometimes we paddle, sometimes we ride the song of Babel, and the soda water inlet bay fills its gurgles and splashes with our songs and sails. We jailers and jailbirds begin our stout adventure through the thicket like a thief, through the hills like a rooster, through the rivers like a lobster, through the lanes like an eel. We practice our gait till we sip with straw, anther, and filament of the honey pistils of shoe flowers, the hibiscus and honeysuckles, and their honeyed vine nectar, that bees often visit us jailers and jailbirds of a sweet sonnet, as sound as the music do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and their reverberating echoes do, di, la, so, ma, fe, re, do of the deep woods beyond the jailers.
And marching up and down the vendons and curves of the deep, deep woods, he began his long, arduous journey. He knew he would be home soon, maybe early evening or so, and catch up with Mr. Badger and Mr. Water Ratty for a lovely tea-time snack and spiced tea. As he rambled through the wide, deep woods, he could hear voices of the crows,
Chuck, chuck,
the early morning hummingbirds and the owls hootenanny,
2 wit, 2 hoots,
and cuckoos
cuckoo, cuckoo.
croon and hum along. Oh, wasn't it all so inexhaustible, the jailer song, the intoxicating tillowing and bellowing leafy branches of sodden and wooden woods, the sky's used trees for poetry, whooshing by the breeze. It sang about the old man wood, cherry song.
Witty, the old man would. Whoosh, wee-hee, quiffy, quitty, wee-hee, wee. It's quite mad to use my name. Critique, quirk, or quitimber wood is spelled as quirk or cobbler, touchwood. So queer, so very rosy. As cobbler goblins busily makes my lucky shoes to fit each and every groove hidden underneath the sod. A cutie tree roots, my trunk and limbs as dark as brown tan, so queer a leather hide, and torso unusually bark my livery pride. Like a cobbler tree house standing aloft, it often hides a shiver up spines of busy critters in a fable land, hopping, scurrying souls to climb tap-tappity-tap up its towering heights, its soul-searching mates and champs, maybe a squirrel, lizard, dove, or sparrow, even a monkey, bear, frog, or a hollow bat, upside down to mock and titivate, a serpent to rattle hisses and hypnotize, and bees to buzz and bombilate, cello and pipe the Pied Pipers, with beaks and talons to match. We all friends of Old Man Wood, a chip off the old block of wood. Rhyme and rhythms, flight and flibberty-gibbets noises, they march and they fight, upright and righteously, for a seat under my precious shape and contours. Its long blades and tallow barks, that Old Man Wood, under the shade and shadow of elm, spruce, adder, birch, pine, willow. His clobbers a rare and bright light, green and sprawling leaves on twigs by far sights revealed, that fell like silent hair and twines so golden and entwined, with fruits, berries, and flowers of a nigger to nip and nibble, carving and chiseling, moulding and meddling with his branches of nod and nud, its nodules, stumps, and spurs that crossed and tillowed and stirred, his call of breath and holy wind that moaned and sighed, calling all the busy birds to sing upon that bough he courtesied so low, a humble Old Man Wood and wind bow, and greet sweetly wood-o-nutty, hallo chipmunks, hallo woodpeckers, howdy-do hornbills, insects one and every kings and kinds, and stood till dusk on his rooted ground, never to stray from his path, one lonely, sodden, wooden jungle path, with so many of his Old Man Wood friends, all who encompassed, as they chipped, he barked from mighty heavens, on strings and branches so wooden, he played woodmaster, and sang for all the Paputian skins wood puppets, both nigh through day as a lark, as a bird that sings, and blind through the night as black, where blind bats hang upside down. Hoods off to the old man wood of chips and chops. The woodcutter has come to bring you down like a fire-breathing dragon from hell's lair. Alas, woe be me! Please don't, I plead. Just hear my song, my prized Blair orchids and sodden roots on grains of gravel. Let me dip my wooden cobbler toes and polished teak boots into riverbed now, where frond and fodder, algae and bacteria thrive, my strange mirrored reflection of pebbles, fungi, weeds, rocks and grass, and the upper sky melts with moaning winds that holler to paint with poetry, mole like clay breath that fashions its wood wheel of pottery, and color our branches that sigh in sorrow. Our flag and anthem on our bark so brown and tan a leather hide, green as grass and mustard a moss, said the old man wood quit-tree to the choppy wind. Whoosh, quee-hee, quee-fee, quitty, quee-hee, quee, cobbler touchwood, so queer, so very rosy.
The ravines and the deep stories surrounding them, the fishermen with their nets and tackles and baits, the shepherdess with her solitary repose, and the knights and his armour's valentines, waiting for him to arrive on his steely horse in shining armour, as well as the prince kissed the sleeping, breathtaking beauty of the gales and vales, bringing her beau paysage alive. La vue, la nature, like a sea la vie, to accept by sights with resignation her awesome splendorous beauty of nature that cries, "That's life" in French, that hypnotized every living creature dabbling in morning treks, such as this lovely pastime or hobby. Mr. Morley indulged in a little nursery rhyme song he made up by the crackling voice of the big black beady ravens for all his friends along the way, the king and his farm of rye, 100 miles.
24 blackbirds sing a song of sixpence, a pocket full of rye, 24 blackbirds baked in a pie. When the pie was opened, the birds began to sing. Wasn't that a dainty dish to set before the Mouse King? The Mouse King was in the counting house, counting out his money. The Mole Queen was in the parlor, eating bread and honey. The Badger Maid was in the garden, hanging out the clothes. Along came a blackbird and snipped off her nose. Sing a song of sixpence, a pocket full of rye, 24 blackbirds baked in a pie. When the pie was opened, the birds began to sing. Wasn't that a dainty dish to set before the Mouse King? They sent for the Rat King's doctor, who sewed it on again. He sewed it on so neatly, the seam was never seen.
That Mr. Morley had made up what he heard way past pleasant time. Morley had a good laugh. He never amused himself for so long that hard. So many years till he spruced another last cap for the verse.
There was such a commotion that little Jenny Wren flew down into the garden and put each their funny noses back again. For you see, blackbirds had stolen all of them. He meant their funny long noses and short ones too.
All shaped like clothes, horses and funny pegs. Just the other day, King Water Ratty had complained to Queen Molly and Maid Badger. The 24 blackbirds of rye began to sing a dainty dish breakfast song of sixpence. Nonetheless, bread scrambles, egg pie scrumptiously prepared for Mr. Toad, the offender, ravenously hungry like those black beady ravens that often perched talons on the balconies of his mansion to steal and then sing with black hoods and beaks. Their infamous nursery rhyme Mr. Mole had learned from them, of course. till it was beginning to get quite a puzzle. The road seemed to bifurcate into smaller and narrower green blotches, into nullity and ambiguous patches of green labyrinths, bushes and foliage, strewn in bits and pieces like a jigsaw map, hewn over the thick gross undergrowth here and there that Mr. Morley could no longer recognize at all. Even if he had a map which by any chance he had forgotten to carry, now he sat on a stump of wooden trunk. He was lost and grimaced to himself.
What a miscue of an adventure. I've landed myself in a soup. Oh, Ratty, where are you? Oh, Badger, I hope I see your little groundhole soon. Who would possibly help me now? I guess it's even beginning to turn dusk. If only I would let my friends know of my foolish trek beyond the wild, wild woods.
You have just finished part 1 of The Whispering Willows. Stay with us as the story continues in part 2.